I'm Declan, and this is Sarah. We work for Hector's House, which is a mental health advocacy and suicide prevention charity based in Hertfordshire. Today, we're going to be talking about how to cope if you're having thoughts of suicide. So before we get into it, one of the first things to just bear in mind, and we'll touch on this again a couple of times through the presentation, is that if you're actively thinking of suicide, you should just seek help immediately. So call 999 or another service that you know of, and get yourself help, get yourself nice and safe. This is for if you've been struggling with suicidal thoughts for a while, or they're beginning to creep into your life more and more. This is what to do about those. So Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, Declan. Before we get into how to cope with thoughts of suicide, I'm just going to very briefly explain why we're here and why Hector's House exists. This is Hector Stringer. He was 18 when he died by suicide, sadly. He was what we would describe as a very normal chap. He had loads of friends. He was incredibly social. And it was really, really shocking for everyone who knew him when he died by suicide. Declan, you also went to school with him, right?
Yeah, so Hector was a couple of years younger than me. We went to the same secondary school. I knew and still know his older brother relatively well. So that's how I first sort of got to know Hector a bit, was through JJ. And Hector and I, if we ever were sort of in the same place at the same time, we'd talk about music and guitars and stuff like that. I saw the band he was in as a teenager play a couple of shows. And yeah, it was a real shock when he died. Yeah, I don't think anyone really saw that coming.
Yeah, and I know that the family, the amazing Stringer family who set the charity up in his name, felt very similar, and they have spent a lot of time wondering what they could have done to prevent it. And I guess Hector's House has kind of come into fruition because they want to make sure that no family have to go through what they went through, and to make sure that nobody, regardless of what age you are or what gender you are, you just knowing that there's somewhere that you can turn to and that suicide isn't the answer is really important to them. So that's why we're here today. Just going to quickly talk about what we do at Hector's House. Our main kind of three aims are education, awareness and support. So we visit schools and organisations and provide mental health training, and suicide prevention training and suicide alertness training. We raise awareness about mental health and suicide stigma online through our social media and our website, and in the community by going to events. And most importantly, for what we're talking about today, we give tailored signposting and support to every single person who reaches out to us. So if you're feeling like you are having thoughts of suicide that are kind of, like you say, Declan, intensifying, or you can't cope, or you're helping someone who's having thoughts of suicide, or even if you're just having a bit of a wobbly day and you're not having thoughts of suicide, but you're struggling to cope, or you are feeling a bit rubbish, just get in touch, because we're always here and we can help.
The other big thing we do as well is bereavement support is a big factor as well. So for people who have recently lost someone, again, that's an enormous strain on people's well-being and mental health, and we can help get people through those kind of tougher moments as well.
Totally. As Declan mentioned when we first started this video, we're going to mention it again. This video and these slides are for people who are having thoughts of suicide, maybe with no active plan to take your own life. If you have an active plan to take your own life, you have the means and you have a time frame, please call 999, get in touch with Hector's House, call Samaritans, or text a helpline. This is an emergency. We need to treat it as such. If you have a safety plan, please refer to it and try and keep yourself safe in the meantime while an ambulance is coming or while someone's coming to support you. Ask for help. Please ask for help. This can be from friends or professionals like Hector's House or some Papyrus or Samaritans, whoever it might be. And if you're really struggling, go to A&E. Just keep yourself safe. We're going to go through what thoughts of suicide look like in this video, but if you are actively feeling like you can't keep yourself safe, please get help.
So what is it specifically that we're going to be talking about and going through in this video today?
So in this video, we're going to talk about how to cope when you're having thoughts of suicide. The main kind of points we're going to go through are what thoughts of suicide are and maybe why they even happen in the first place. We're going to talk about how they come and go, like we always kind of describe them as waves. We're going to speak about recognizing the signs that you might be getting to the point of having thoughts of suicide, or that your mental health is maybe dropping a few pegs if you are able to keep yourself safe. Distraction techniques and safety plan and getting support is the main aim of this video, and I hope that's kind of what the big takeaway is for people watching it. And then talking about self-compassion and self-care and how crucial that is when we are feeling rubbish and having thoughts of suicide, or even, like I say, just kind of wobbly moments in general. Having self-compassion and understanding the importance of looking after yourself, even if it's a 1% little change, is really important during these times. So that's kind of what we're going to be going through today.
Perfect. Yeah, it's something that gets talked about a lot as well, the self-compassion thing, and feeling your feelings and accepting that you're not going to be out there ready to battle the world all the time. You are going to have moments where things feel a little bit harder and a little bit heavier, and like, that's okay. That's a normal thing to feel. But if those feelings become overwhelming, it's a sign that maybe it's time to start changing some things in your life, or looking for places that can help you or people that can help you, and just extra support, and just to give yourself a little bit of a break while you're trying to figure those things out is the important thing.
I think there's a big misconception about thoughts of suicide, that they are weak or a sign of selfishness, but it's absolutely not the case. These are kind of some of the things that we've heard from people who are having thoughts of suicide. It could be that it's the only way to stop the pain, what you might be feeling. It might be a feeling of not being good enough. It might be a feeling of not understanding that things are going to get better, or not being able to see that there's hope or a light at the end of the tunnel. And a big one is that people feel like a burden, and you might even genuinely believe that people's lives will be better off without you here. These are very normal, and as I see it, totally not selfish in any way. If anything, it's quite the opposite. And it's okay that you're feeling this way, but it's so important that you reach out for help, because things will get better and you are not a burden. And there is so much reasons to live. It's just that we can't see it in the depth of where we are at the moment. But there is always hope, and there is always a way of stopping the pain that you're in. It's very temporary. We always say at Hector's House that suicide is a very permanent solution to a temporary problem. So it's just about getting you through what you're going through right now, getting through it as safely as we can, and then moving on to the next steps of your recovery.
The two things there is, not only are you not a burden, but also you're not in this on your own.
Totally.
There's plenty of people, whether they're people that you know personally or not, there are plenty of people out there who will help and who want to help, and who'll do everything they can to help and to keep you around and to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. And those people will be so happy to look back from the future and be like, oh, I'm so glad I was able to help that person. Even people that you don't know, whether that's because you're getting in touch with a helpline or through the NHS or anything else. There are so many people out there that want to help and that want to get you through those tough times and get you into a better place. And it's 100%, it's possible to get into a better place.
Totally.
It's just getting there and recognizing that the time to reach out for help is as soon as you start to really notice these thoughts. You don't have to be at the point of ultimate crisis. There are services out there for people everywhere, in any kind of position you can be in.
Mm-hmm. Completely. I think that we're quite guilty doing that as humans in general, that we wait until something's really bad until we reach out for help. It could be that you have a cough and you wait until it's like particularly bad and before you call the doctor. With thoughts of suicide, we would say almost the instant that you're starting to have those thoughts, reach out. Like, there's no scale of severity that means that you won't get help. Like I say, we will even help someone who's just having a really rubbish day. So if you're having any thoughts of suicide, or even that you feel like you might be getting to that stage, reach out. It's always okay to reach out, and you're always worthy of that support.
Oftentimes these thoughts of suicide, it's not really about wanting to not be alive. Mm-hmm. It's about just wanting to be out of the situation that you're in. Totally. And that can seem like the quickest way out or the most efficient way out, but there are so many better ways to get through whatever is happening in your life, and it's just getting you safe so that you can then get through those other things.
Completely. That one thing that I know we get asked quite a lot, actually, especially with people who are having thoughts of suicide, is does it get better? Have you ever helped someone who has had thoughts of suicide and now they don't have thoughts of suicide anymore? And it's like literally every day, like it happens. It's so capable of happening. And I know sometimes we're very, again, we have that thought that, well, that's for them, not for me, but it 100% is for you. Like it will get better, and we see it all the time. And I know it's really hard to see it when you, like I say, you're in the depths of it. It's so hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's there. I promise you it's there. But you can't do it alone, and nobody would expect you to do it alone, which is why places like Hector's House exist in the first place.
Yeah. And for some people, it's a much quicker process than others. Don't put pressure on yourself that, you're going to feel better in a week or 2 weeks or a day. We work with people individually. We take people where we find them. It's a big thing. And we take people's circumstances into account, and we work with you and with what's happening in your life. We don't have a one-size-fits-all solution that we cram everyone into.
Precisely that. Everyone is so different. So one thing that we've come to notice with our work is that thoughts of suicide or thoughts of self-harming even kind of come and go in waves. They will intensify, but they will always drop down. Sometimes at the tip of it, when it feels completely overwhelming and like there's nothing else that you can do apart from act on those thoughts of suicide or self-harm, that's where we want to target. And it seems very impossible when you're in that moment, but we will literally say go second by second. We're not talking about a day of, we don't want to put it into a time frame that feels unrealistic to you. If you can just keep yourself safe for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, back down to just the 5 seconds, that's okay. But it's just about knowing what to do when those thoughts of suicide get really high, and understand and know that it's heightened at the moment, but it will drop down. It's not going to stay heightened forever. It never does in our experience. So it's just about learning, we always say, like, ride the wave. So what are the signs that it's starting to intensify? How do I keep myself safe when it's at the peak? And then understanding that it will eventually drop down. And that's not to say, like, you could be like this all day, but it's just knowing that it's going to be okay. I'm going to quickly talk about what can lead to thoughts of suicide. There's a well-known phrase called stacking, which is where this is all the external kind of life events that happen to us, which are overwhelming and can cause us to have kind of poor mental health. So it could be, really serious issues at school or work, maybe a redundancy or maybe bullying. It could be trauma, past trauma that you've experienced, or trauma that you're going through at the moment. It could be a really intense bereavement, especially suicide bereavement, that can make us feel like we can't cope. There's so many things that happen to us that we have no control over whatsoever, that will stack up inside and lead us to feeling like we just can't get through this. This is impossible. And sometimes it feels like once we already have a number of stacking things, another thing is piled on top. And these are, like I said, these are things that are happening to us. So they're totally out of our control. But it's about understanding that even if things don't get better, we'll focus on getting you to get stronger in how to deal with them, if that makes sense. So how do I cope with having a really bad time at work? How do I cope with the grief of losing a parent or a loved one? And again, it all goes back to, you don't have to do this alone. And then we also like to think of our emotional bucket being overflowing. So if you have a standard bucket in your brain that has the stacking in there, so it's already kind of half full, we'll say. Then you've got a family argument, you've got the workload from school or work, you haven't had enough sleep, the news is on in the background and it's just rubbish after rubbish. Your room or your house is cluttered, everything's really overwhelming. What's going to happen is that bucket is just going to overflow, and that's what we describe as overwhelm. So it's about understanding what is causing my overwhelm, what is in my environment that is actually in some way controllable, not always, but in some way controllable, that is already adding to the external things that have happened to me. That's when we have that peak of those thoughts of suicide or overwhelm. So it's about understanding that it's a bucket that you are partially in control of, not completely. But what we're going to go through is how to basically drill a hole into this bucket so that a little bit of water can leak out before it gets to the stage of overflowing into that overwhelm.
And also recognizing that maybe there are some things contributing to that you can turn off or slow down. So for example, if the news is one that's really, really getting to you, you can disable the news on your phone, or you can try and watch less of it. If it's getting jealous of what you're seeing on social media, it's mitigating how much you use that. There are some things that you can do. There are some things that are out of your control, but it's trying to work out and recognize what you can do that's good for you as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to talk very briefly about thought looping. So this is a kind of psychology practice that we've come to understand, that when we have a thought, it dictates our feelings, and then those feelings dictate what we do, our actions, and then our actions massively influence the events that happen around us, and then it proves the thought that we've originally had.
Yeah, negative reinforcement.
Massively so. Declan, you had a really good example of this when we went through it before.
Yeah, it's something you see people do a lot, talk about themselves in a very negative light. So say, oh, well, I can't do such and such thing because I'm too stupid to do that, or I can't do that thing because I'm too weak, or whatever it is. And you're putting yourself immediately you're setting yourself up to fail. And then by doing that, you're not going to be able to succeed at something because you've already decided you're not going to pull it off anyway. And then people get stuck in these thought patterns, and it diminishes your sense of self-worth. And it's a very, very negative mindset. And the more you get into that spiral, the harder it is to break out of it, and the kind of tighter each coil of that wraps around you. And it's something I really do see a lot of, not just in the work that we do. I see it in everyday life, talking to friends, talking to random people that I meet. It's a very common thing. People will zero in on what they feel is their worst qualities, and they'll kind of push those. And it's very frustrating. People will talk about finding themselves unattractive, or finding themselves to be stupid or incapable. And it's such a negative mindset to be in. And I see it all the time.
Absolutely. And understanding that that's the human psyche, like we have a negative bias. So it's not anything that you're doing wrong. And we're not here to berate you for having a negative mindset, because as humans, we still have caveman brains. They have not caught up to the 21st century. We had to think negatively to keep ourselves safe and alive. So we all of us have a negative bias. We are all going to start thinking negatively, but we can think positively it's a bit like two paths in our brain. One is well trodden, so it's clear. There's no bushes over tangling it. It's actually quite pleasant. We're used to it. It's familiar. We know where it goes. And the positive side of our brain, which is what we're talking about here, it's overgrown. You can't even get through it. You can't even take one step forward. So it's about learning how to start slowly, kind of chopping away at those bushes, making the ground more walkable. And it's absolutely possible to do.
The example that gets thrown around a lot, but it's a very easy one just to help you sort of visualize and understand this, is saying thank you instead of saying sorry.
Yeah, that was so good. You say.
Yeah, and it's such a great example. So rather than saying, "Oh, sorry for being late," you can say thank you for waiting. So instead of constantly putting yourself in a position of apologizing because you feel like, again, you're kind of burdening people with your existence, instead you're being grateful for people for being around you and for being involved in whatever it is you're doing. So rather than even little things like saying, oh, instead of saying excuse me, people say sorry as well. So we go, oh, sorry, can you pass me such and such a thing? Rather than saying excuse me, could you pass me that, and then saying thank you. You can shift these negative things not only from being not negative, but actually into gratitude. It takes time and it can seem very trivial, but if you're having these negative thought loops all day, every day, it's an overwhelming part of your existence and your internal monologue. And if you can begin turning these things around, it can really have a hugely positive outcome on the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And I think an example of this would be feeling like there's no hope. So your thought is, there's no hope for me. The feeling then becomes one of hopelessness or helplessness. You're then not going to put yourself forward for opportunities. You're not going to look into getting a new house or a new job, or even, starting that gym class you want to do, or starting painting, because it's like, well, what's the point? There's no hope here.
Yep.
So dictate the actions that we do. And then that dictates the events. Well, then you're never going to learn how to paint that you've always wanted to do. You're not going to become that writer that you wanted because you're not picking up the pen. And then that then proves the original thought that you've had, that there's no hope.
Something is better than nothing.
1%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's 1% more than you did yesterday. If you can do a little bit of something today, it's more than you did yesterday, you're beginning whatever that thing is, that journey.
Totally. And this is what we're not expecting people who are having thoughts of suicide to suddenly go, oh my God, I'm cured. And I'm just thinking positively now. Like, that's not what we're saying at all. But as Declan said, it's that 1%. Can you just have that, just even catch yourself having that negative thought of things are hopeless, and just go, oh, that is not fact. That is just a thought that I'm having. This thought will now, I've got an option here with this thought. I can either prove it right or prove it wrong. And even if it's just that you catch the negative thought and you do nothing with it apart from not take it as fact, you're winning. Like, that's amazing. That's a huge first step.
Absolutely.
So it's spotting the signs. This is when we want you to understand that spotting the signs in yourself, that your mental health might be starting to decline, or that you might be having those thoughts of suicide starting to creep back in a bit. These are very generic ones. They do happen to most people who are having poor mental health phase or thoughts of suicide, but you know yourself better than anyone else. So you should be able to recognize the signs in yourself that you're not doing well. And even just being able to recognize those signs for you is a huge step. But the ones that we talk about a lot at Hector's House are having a sleep disturbance. Now, this could be you sleep more than you usually would, or less than you usually would, or you can't get to sleep, or you're falling asleep so easily you're falling asleep in public, for example. So it's anything that's outside of the norm for what's normal for you. And then isolation is a big one. It can be that, you're not responding to people's messages, or you find that you have less enjoyment or want to be around people that you would usually really enjoy seeing. You're not responding to messages about going out to play football in the park or to have drinks after work. Just noticing that, if I'm withdrawing slightly, what does this mean? Is it that I need to recharge and actually I find social events really draining, or is it that I'm trying just to distance myself from people? Because again, it'll prove my thought that nobody cares about me right, instead of it proving it wrong, which is that you've got so many people around you who love you and care for you.
It can also be, isolation can be something that's sort of thrust upon you, and that can be, the other way around. It can be leading to this negative loop as well. If you're in a situation where you're being isolated, so if you're in a situation where perhaps you're in a relationship where the other person is not letting you see certain people or do things that you used to do, could just be financially that you're not in a position to go out and do as many things as you would like to do. There's a lot of reasons for it, and it could be that you're isolating because you feel too tired or too exhausted, or that no one wants you there anyway. And it could also be that you're beginning to lose your sense of self-worth because you're not able to go out and do things that you want to do and see people that you want to see. So isolation can come from many sources, but either way, it can lead to a serious downturn in your mental health.
Absolutely. And then the next two kind of are linking together. So you could be giving away your possessions, which we would say is quite a jump up from not being able to sleep, or just, feeling that, like you said, feeling that isolation. But giving away things like, not just sentimental items are a huge one, or maybe you're giving away a car, or thinking, what's going to happen to this item when I die? I'm going to give it to somebody that I know can look after it. So if you find yourself wanting to have those steps, taking those steps, that's a big one. But the one that's kind of linked to it, that would be the first sign that you're getting to the giving away possessions, would be that you have no interest in the things that usually bring you joy. So if you play guitar and you really enjoy it, have you stopped wanting to play guitar? If you usually love going out for walks or hikes, are you suddenly or gradually feeling like that's not something that you want to do anymore? It could be that you loved baking before and now you just can't be bothered. Little things like that are really important to keep an eye out for, especially if they are good for your mental health and bring you joy. Because again, it's kind of going into that thought looping practice of, I've got no joy in my life, therefore I'm going to prove it by my actions. So I'm going to take out everything that has actually brought me joy in the past.
I know for me, a big one is skateboarding. If I'm not in a good place mentally, it's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm doing pretty well and I'm in a pretty good place, I like going skating and hang out with my friends and all that kind of stuff. It's one of my absolute favorite things in the world. But yeah, if I'm not in a good headspace, I just have zero interest in it.
Totally. I know my one is, I love walking in nature. I love getting into the woods and just being immersed in the trees. But there are days, I know they're my bad days, when I'm like, I just couldn't think of anything worse right now than having to get dressed and go outside. But then it's like catching myself and going, actually, today is the one day I absolutely need to make that the priority, because it's only going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And then a big one for us would be, speaking of no future, or feeling like there is no future for you, or feeling like there is no point to a future for you. That's a big sign that those thoughts of suicide might be coming in, or that our mental health might be on the decline. So that's a really big one. And then it's also really important to keep an eye on any stacking that's going on in your life. Like, even if you wrote it down, like, what is going on for me right now? I've got loads of rubbish going on at school. My parents are driving me mad. My friends are, like you said, like, isolating me. That's huge. That's a lot to be dealing with. So you can almost write out everything that's your external events that are happening to you, the overwhelm that you're feeling. Is my room a mess? Have I been spending hours and hours scrolling TikTok or social media? You can write down all the things that are overwhelming you, and then spotting the signs for yourself, like we've just gone through here, and going, this is how I know I need help. So we talked about how the waves come up and then they go down. We're not expecting you to be in that heightened state where you feel like self-harm or suicide is the only option. We're not just going to leave you there. Ideally, calling a helpline, texting Hector to 85258, getting in touch with Hector's house is the absolute best thing to do. But sometimes those things can take time. You might not be in a position where you can call. So what we would like to teach you is some distraction techniques that will keep you safe in that moment. And again, we're talking seconds here, not minutes, not hours. If all you can do is 5 seconds of this, fantastic. If we can extend that out to 10 minutes, brilliant. But let's just focus on the very gradual keeping safe. So here are just a few examples of what you can do for distraction techniques. As we said before, everyone is unique. Some of these things you're going to go, I couldn't think of anything worse. Actually, I've got ones that I really like that aren't on the list. But writing these down on your safety plan, which is what we're going to get to in a second, is really important, because it's very hard to think of these distraction techniques when you're in that heightened stage. So a few examples are dancing or shaking to music. Moving or shaking is a really great way of releasing stress in the body. It's one of the quickest ways that we can do it. That's why when we're really stressed, we actually physically shake. Or a dog will shake itself when it's needing to reset. So moving your body is brilliant. But I find that it's easier to do it to music. So put on one of your favorite songs. It could be upbeat, it can be sad. You can sway, you can dance, you can just literally shake it out, punch a pillow, whatever it is, but just move your body in some way. Music helps. Play a video game, play a game on your phone, get your Xbox out. It's not, I think sometimes it's quite villainized, but actually, if it keeps you safe in that moment, do it. It'd be so good for you just to have that distraction, to have that little bit of escapism. Obviously, everything in moderation. We don't want to spend hours on our video games, but in the moment of the heightened feelings of self-harm or suicide, it's a fantastic distraction technique. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique is a really good, what we would call a grounding tool. So it brings you from that really scary overwhelm where everything is fuzzy and you can't even catch your breath. It'll just help to bring you back to the present moment. So you can do it out loud or in your head. Sometimes I know that, for example, I hate the dentist. I will do this technique in the dentist's office to help just to bring myself back down. So it's noticing 5 things that you can see. So I can see my phone, a plant, a door, whatever it is that you can see in your area. Then go through 4 things that you can touch or feel. So it could be the jumper that you have on, it could be a water bottle, a soft toy or a blanket or a duvet, anything like that, and just feel it and really think about the texture of the item that you're feeling. And then it's 3 things you can hear. So even now I'm in quite a quiet room, but I can hear my laptop whirring, I can hear some birds outside, I can hear my dog walking up and down the stairs constantly. So little things like that. Again, it's all about bringing yourself back into the present moment. And then it's 2 things you can smell. Now this could be a smell in your room that you're already smelling, or it could be that you go out and you actually pick up a candle that you like and you smell it, or you spray perfume or aftershave. Just get some sense going on in your area. And then number 1 is something that you can taste. Again, you can maybe taste toothpaste because you just brushed your teeth, or it could be that you go out and you actively get something to taste, make yourself a cup of coffee, have some fruit, and really experience the taste of that. And this will hopefully, by doing this technique, from everything being overwhelming and unsure, it'll hopefully just make you come down a few notches in that feeling of overwhelm, helping to bring that wave back down again.
I think it's also one that the harder it is to identify all of those things, the better it works.
Yeah.
The more you're shutting everything else out to focus in on that. I think especially once you get to the 3, 2, 1 part of it,
harder.
The other stuff begins to kind of fall away more and more and more as you are thinking about, if you're sat in just a room and it's like 2 things you can smell, you're like, oh, I can't really smell anything. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about that rather than thinking about whatever it was that was kind of whirring around your head before.
Totally. It's a really good technique. Holding an ice cube. This is particularly good if you're feeling like you want to self-harm, because it's quite unpleasant as a feeling, but it also helps to, basically it resets your nervous system, because your body's all of a sudden like, why am I all of a sudden holding something freezing cold? And it kind of shocks it into concentrating on what's going on in the present moment. So you can hold an ice cube in your hand, squeeze it. Obviously, if it's very uncomfortable, drop it. But what it hopefully does is takes you from that, again, place of heightened emotions, brings you back down a little bit. Explore tastes. Get some fizzy sweets. Something, suck on a lemon. Something, again, that just shocks your body going, what the heck has just happened? That can be a really good distraction technique. Colouring or doodling, grabbing a pen, and even if it's literally just grabbing a pen and scribbling like crazy, and then doing some whirlings, and maybe then you'll notice that you actually want to draw something. Or if you have a colouring book to hand, just start colouring in. It seems really pointless, but the point here is keeping safe. So we're not here to make a masterpiece. We're here just to keep us busy in that time of overwhelm. Blowing bubbles is a really funny one. And it seems completely pointless, but it's so great. Number 1, they're just brilliant to look at. I mean, anyone who thinks otherwise, come on, look at them. They're amazing. But also the actual act of blowing bubbles is really good, because it makes you take a deep breath in and a very slow exhale out. And then you can spend time watching the bubbles where they fall. You can pop them. But yeah, having a little pack of bubbles in your room or with you I always bring some in my bag in case I get a moment of panic when I'm out and about, or my daughter does. They're only like 90p, I think. So definitely have a little pack of bubbles. It really does help to control your breathing really well, which brings us on nicely actually to our breathing exercises. focusing on the breath is so good. Again, not only for distracting us, but also to help reset our nervous system and just take us down a few notches in our overwhelm. One of our favorite ones would be 4-7-8, which would be inhaling for 4, holding for 7, exhaling for 8. As you just seen, I find that hard to remember. So don't worry if you can't remember it. A really simple one that I like to use is breathing in and for example, 4 seconds, and then breathing out for twice that amount. So for 8 seconds. And if you can only manage a breath in for 2, exhale for 4, and then see if you can work up to inhaling for 4 and breathing out for 8. And breathing out nice and slowly through your mouth. So again, imagine that you're blowing bubbles or you're blowing out a birthday candle. It will just help it really does genuinely help to reset your nervous system. When we're in moments of panic or overwhelm, our breath gets short. So by doing slow exhales, you're actually tricking your brain to thinking everything's okay. And then stroking a pet, if you have one, of course, is always nice. They're just lovely. They release the love hormone as well. And it's someone, again, who can kind of give you that unconditional love. So if you have a pet, play with it, stroke it. Even, if it's a cat or a dog, throw a ball or get a toy out and just spend some time with it. And then there is plenty more distraction techniques in general on our library of Calm, which we'll go through in a moment. Can you think of any more, Dec?
There's so many. It can be, it's anything that forces you to think about the activity rather than how you're feeling.
Totally.
So it could be reading something, could be just putting the TV on and watching, maybe not even a TV show. It could be, because there's so many things now on YouTube where it's things that almost just fill your screen. Mm-hmm. Whether it's snow falling or a fireplace burning, or there's those big videos that are about 10 hours long where they're filmed from the front of a train and it's just trains going through the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes things like that are great as something to just sit and look at, and you can kind of zone out and just be in a moment for a little while. And things like that are an enormous help.
Absolutely. And I think, sometimes we like to keep our hands busy when we're feeling really overwhelmed. So if you could sit and watch one of those and have a fidget toy or some Play-Doh or something like that while you're watching it, even doing Lego. I've worked with someone before whose distraction technique was building Lego, because it's such a mindful task and you have to concentrate on it, that they just had sets of Lego that they would go to and build when they were having thoughts of suicide or thoughts of self-harm. So like you say, it's completely individual to what you like and what works for you. You're, like we keep saying, yourself best here.
I have a big thing about thinking about sort of rhythms. There's a thing called a paradiddle, which is where you go right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, as opposed to going like right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And you can break them down into, you can make really complex patterns out of them. But I think about that a lot, and it's something that you can do physically, like tapping your hands and stuff.
Absolutely,
you can just think in terms of right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. And you can go right, left, right, 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 left, right, left, 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 right, left, right, right, left, right, left. You can build patterns. And it's like, it's a really weird thing, but I think about it a lot. And it's just a strange thought process I've kind of got myself into. And it's just a really strange thing to focus on instead of whatever it is you're worried about.
No, it's perfect.
As a distraction technique, is definitely something that I use a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one that I use a lot is meditations on, like, free ones on YouTube that I find. And we also have a few from our amazing volunteer Catherine, who is a mindful pro. And I find that just putting in my headphones and listening to a meditation and relaxing through it, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, I feel so much better afterwards. So again, like I say, what works for me probably won't work for you. It's learning what works for us. Even if we want to write them down, like I say, on our safety plan, which we're going to go through in a minute, would be such a big help, because it's so hard to think about them when we're having those heightened feelings as well. We just talked about our Library of Calm. This is on the Hector's House website, or you can Google Library of Calm Hector's House and this will pop up. There is so many distraction techniques on here, I can't even tell you. We have ones for what to watch, what to listen to, what to write about. an action you can take, a movement you can do. It's been actually quite popular with the people that we work with when we say, because it's so hard, again, we said we haven't written our distraction techniques down, it's so hard to think of something off the top of your head. So if all you remember is going and visiting the Library of Cam, go and do that. Put a TED talk on, do a very quick yoga stretch on YouTube, whatever it is that will help you in that moment. But having the Library of Cam in your toolbox is a really good one. So I've talked about safety plans. I'll actually explain what a safety plan is. Number one, I believe that every single person should have a safety plan, even if you're not having thoughts of suicide. This is a document, this is the first part of it, but I think you can get them off places like Papyrus website, or reach out to Hector's House and we can actually sit on a Zoom call with you as you work through a safety plan. Just because, as I know, it's very hard to think of these things when we're in those heightened moments. But this is a document that we will create when you're feeling you're on that downward scale of those thoughts of suicide. And we're going to go through why we want to live, what's our long-term reasons for living. And again, like I said, things that what we've recognized for ourselves are signs that I'm starting to feel worse, things that make me feel safe, distraction techniques, people I can turn to when I'm having thoughts of suicide. You're going to do the hard work well, so that when you're not feeling well, it's there and it's ready for you. And like I said, this is something that we can do with you at Hector's House. It's a document that if you Google it, it's there if you want to do it with someone. I would really recommend printing it out, giving it to, if you're working with a counsellor or a GP or a crisis team or your parents or friends, I'd just give it to anyone who is there to support you, whoever's in your kind of circle of care. It'd be really good if they had a copy of your safety plan too. This app is amazing. And again, it's one of those things I just wish everyone had on their phone in their toolbox for when, even if they're just having a wobbly day. So this is called the Stay Alive app. It is free to download on anywhere, any app store. And it will do a digital version of a safety plan for you. So it'll ask you questions and you can answer it, and then it'll all compile into your safety plan, which you can access on your phone or on your laptop at any stage. This will again be something that you can print out, again be a great one to share with friends, just to make sure that they know what's good for you when you're having thoughts of suicide or when you're in those heightened stages. But yeah, if you can just get your phones out right now during this video, find the Stay Alive app and download it, and then spend 10 minutes working through the questions. That would be amazing. We're now going to talk about probably the most important part of this video, I would say, is reaching out for help, because nobody would expect you to do this alone, and you shouldn't have to. So when we say open up, this could be to a helpline, it could be to a friend, it could be to a parent, a partner, but just let people know how you're feeling. It's so important, and I know it's the scariest thing. I've called helplines in the past and I've gone to call the number and just not done it because it just felt so terrifying. But I promise you, once you actually get through to that person on the other end of the line, they're like the nicest people and they are so grateful that you've got in touch. So don't be afraid. I know it's really scary, but don't be afraid. Just keep on the line until someone answers. Because once you've made that initial contact, it does get easier. The scariest part is actually making the call or sending the text. So how to open up with someone? Like I say, it starts with a text. If you want to speak to a friend first, just text them and say, "Hi mate, wondered if you're free for a catch up soon. I'm not doing great." You don't have to make this big announcement of going, "I'm having thoughts of suicide." You can just say, "I'm not doing my best and I could do with a chat." I think we're really guilty of thinking that we're going to be a burden to our friends and family, because we know that everyone has normal life going on. They've all got their own stresses. But the way I think about it is that if my best friend or one of my friends was having thoughts of suicide or was in a really dark place, and then I had my own stuff going on, I would be gutted if they didn't reach out. So that's the way to think about it. You're never a burden. You're never a burden.
I think as well, it's in terms of a couple of people I know who have talked to me about things they've had going on, up to and including thoughts of suicide. for them it feels like they're putting you out of sorts by kind of putting something so heavy onto you. But I think the thing is that if you're the person someone reaches out to, it feels like quite a privilege that someone trusts you, those things. And I think that's the thing to bear in mind, is that these people who care about you and that want what's best for you and that value your well-being, they're not going to be bothered by you going to them. They're going to feel lucky that it was them that you've gone to, and they're going to recognize that, you know, the trust that comes with that and the privileged position they're in, that you're able to trust them with these big issues and these big complex kind of topics.
That's so true. Definitely. And I think that it can be very easy to be discouraged if we don't get that response, which is why we've got try and try again on there. Because if someone is in a really bad place and they haven't got capacity for you, that doesn't mean that you're a burden to anyone else. So hopefully choosing the right person that you know is a person you can trust, is a person that is not just going to diminish what you're going through. Excellent. But if it's someone that doesn't respond the way you want it to, don't be deterred from doing it again. That's really important. Please try again. And if all else fails, call a helpline, because those people are trained to support you. And they exist for a reason. Samaritans wouldn't be here unless there was people that needed the support. Hector's House wouldn't be here doing this video telling you to open up and come to us if we didn't think you were worthy of that support. It's so important that you reach out.
I mean, I know we've had plenty of people come to us who are, you know, they've talked to their spouse or, you know, a friend about it, and that was the first big step for them to try and open up. And they either got a response which was kind of a moot response, or they immediately were met with something that was a little bit aggressive or competitive. So it's immediately this thing of like, well, you know, I'm dealing with this thing. You know, then it becomes about competition, or it was a case of, you know, if it's someone, we had someone whose spouse was almost dealing with it in terms of the reason you're feeling this way must be my fault. So now it's about how I feel in regards to your feelings, rather than actually talking about your feelings. And if you find yourself in a position like that where someone you've talked to isn't capable of providing empathy or whatever it is that you need, this is literally what we're here for.
So exactly.
Texting Shout or texting Hector to 85258, or, you know, a myriad of other services. It might be that the person you want to go to about this isn't in a position or doesn't have the understanding of what it is that you're going through. But there are places and there are institutions that are trained for it and that are there for this exact purpose, and that want to help, like actively want to help.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that's something that Robert Stringer, Hector's dad, always says, is he's like, we would be so happy to hear from you. It's never a burden for us. We are always delighted when someone reaches out for help, because that just shows us so much hope.
Again, it's a privilege.
100% it is. 100% it is. I always think that we're so lucky to do the work that we're doing, but we can only do it when the people reach out. So please, please, please reach out for whoever it may be. If it's Hector's House, if it's Samaritans, if it's Papyrus. On our website, we've got a list of helplines that will deal with specific issues as well, like abuse or bullying or eating disorders, whatever it might be that you know is the main cause of your overwhelm. Please, please, please reach out. It's so important. We've kind of already talked about this, but there's a huge amount of people that you can turn to. If turning to your friends or your loved ones or your family aren't always trained in what to do, and also we're going to recommend that they get in touch with someone else anyway.
It can also be, just to sort of add a caveat to that, it can also be that they might be, not through a fault of their own, a big factor in why you're feeling so exhausted.
Very true.
You're supporting someone who's going through their own, you know, mental health problems. If you have a partner who has severe anxiety or an eating disorder or something like that, you can be exhausted by supporting them.
Totally.
And you can't necessarily reflect that back on them, because you're going to make them feel more guilty. So you need support from somewhere external. And that's where places like this and people like us really, really become very important. You know, if you've got a friend who's made redundant and is going through a divorce, and you're really trying your best to help them, and it's exhausting you, and you've got some stuff going on that you feel you can't kind of reciprocate that with because they're in such a bad place, then this is where these services become extremely important.
Definitely that.
And also, it's okay to, if you are helping someone who you love who's going through a hard time and it's exhausting you, that's okay. Like, don't feel bad for it being hard work on you. That, like, you're only one person.
We call it a carer role because you are their carer. That is the extent of it. Like, living with someone or being around someone who you're supporting is a lot. And that's not, and I know that 99% of people wouldn't change it. They are so grateful to play such a big part in that person's recovery or healing or journey. But knowing that it will have effect it's cool. It's okay. It's good. It's good to recognize that it's going to have an effect. But we know that you wouldn't take it. You wouldn't take it away.
Yep. And you're not the only person who's dealing with that thing and who feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's dealing with a relative who's got dementia or is going through a sort of illness, and if you're feeling guilty because you feel bad because of the strain it's putting on you, you're not the only person. It's a very, very normal response, and it's a very normal way to feel. And it also is something that you not necessarily can talk to that person about that thing. So again, there are places you can go to and people who you can talk to who can empathize with you and help you look after yourself. And if you need to look after yourself in order to look after someone else, then that's, again, it's what these services are for, and it's what these people are for, and it's what they want to do.
Totally. It's why they exist. I keep saying that to people. They wouldn't exist if they weren't open to taking your call or having your text.
Yeah.
So if you're having thoughts of suicide, we want you to have your safety plan. And again, like I say, get in touch with Hector's House if you want us to help with that safety plan. Have your distraction techniques in place. Third point, reach out to someone. Call one of these helplines. Samaritans is a great one. Texting Hector to 85258 I find really good, because sometimes in moments of overwhelm, this is quite a common thing. I don't know if this works for everybody, but for myself, especially if I'm overwhelmed, I can't talk. Like, that's one of the first things I can't do. I can't get my words out. This is where texting comes in super handy. That's not going to be the case for everyone. Some people are going to prefer that real human connection in having the Samaritans there. I will say that the Hector to 85258, just to reassure people, they are all humans at the other end of the line. Robert Stringer, Hector's dad, being one of the volunteers that will take your texts. They're all fully trained. They're all there, like you said, they're there to do the job, aren't they?
It's great as well if you need privacy.
Completely.
You know, if you're struggling with thoughts of suicide, and for example, your partner and your children are in the house and it's 3 a.m, you can't necessarily call someone if you don't want to wake everyone else up, but you can text, you can have a conversation still, and you can still reach out for help.
It's so good for that.
Yeah, I think that's really where one of the many strong suits of that particular service is that privacy factor is a big, big thing.
Completely. And the great thing about the 8525 Shout 85258 and the Samaritans is they're open 24/7.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very common that we have our moments of overwhelm at nighttime or in the early hours of the morning. That's very normal. So making sure that you know the helplines that are open 24/7 is really important. Hector's House isn't open 24/7. We're open 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, but you can always email us in, even if it's 4 a.m, and when someone will respond to you when the office opens up again, and we can go from there. But just knowing where to turn to, that's 24/7. That's there to listen and just help you get through that moment of the real heightened stage of the thoughts of suicide or feeling like everything's just too much. I promise you, I know it's terrifying sending that first text and picking up the phone and hearing the ringtone, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And then the Hector's House team, what we do in greater detail. So we will help you to create a safety plan. As I said, we can do that either on the phone or via Zoom. Obviously, you can do a safety plan by yourself if you feel better, but we're there to kind of help prompt and to help you understand why it's so important. We can then give you advice, like we've just kind of spoken about today, give you advice on how to stay well. especially when we're having those waves of the thoughts of suicide or self-harm. And then anything else that you might need support with. It could be that you've already been to your GP, but there's a waiting list and you feel like you need counselling, or you feel like you need a referral for a certain particular kind of care. It could be that you need advice on where to turn to about housing. We can help find that helpline for you. We're not experts in anything in particular, but what we can do is help with that massive amount of kind of brain work that it takes to find the people that can help you.
I think what we really do is act as a bridge.
Totally.
To put you in touch with the people who are able to help with whatever your situation is.
Yeah. And the great thing about Hector's House is if you are getting support from the NHS or you are getting support from another charity, we're still going to be here. Yeah. We're not going to go away just because you fit a box somewhere else. Like, we're here regardless. It doesn't matter what care you are or are not getting, we're here for you. So now we're going to quickly run through some examples of self-compassion and self-care and how to check in with yourself. So the 1 to 10 check-in is a great tool, and we use it at Hector's House. Even the staff and the trustees and volunteers, we use a 1 to 10 check-in most meetings that we have, which is, what number am I? What number are you today? And that is number 1, feeling really crap and maybe having thoughts of suicide, to number 10, feeling absolutely great. I very rarely know someone at a 10, I will say, but it does happen. It does happen. I would say, well, Declan, where are you on the scale today?
I would go maybe like a 7.5. I think, same as I've said before, if I'm anything above an 8, I'm pretty insufferable. I'm like an absolute whirlwind of like, my voice will be twice as loud, I'll talk twice as fast, I'll say twice as much, and it's like, it's a bit much, and I know it's a bit much, so I'm like, I try and like dial myself back a bit. But then there are certain applications where that's really useful. Like if I'm playing a show, I kind of need to be able to do all that stuff, and that's when I can push everything up to a 10. There's enough space that I can fill that without kind of suffocating everyone else in the room. Whereas if we're trying to have a conversation and I'm doing that, it's like, that's going to be no fun for anyone. So yeah. And I think for me, between sort of 7 and 8, it's like, that's where I'm in a good place mentally. Like, I feel pretty happy. I feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
My thoughts aren't too kind of jumbled up. My brain isn't running too fast. That kind of puts me in a good spot. For me, I'd say if I'm sort of dipping under a 6 is when I'm starting to have like a bad day. Like a 6 might be that I'm still pretty much fine, but maybe I'm just really tired. But I'm essentially I'm a little bit slow off the mark on that day. I think for me, anything under a 6 is beginning to be more of a bad day than a good day.
I hear you totally.
Yeah. I don't know how you would define your, like, the 1 to 10 scale in context of yourself and where you sit on that on any given day.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Everyone kind of defines it differently because it's in your own head how you figure this out. But I don't know how you would explain it.
I think if I'm at a 5, I will actively look to increase my number. But if I'm at a 6 or a 7, I'm pretty content. I'm happy being at a 6 or 7. Anything lower than a 5, everything else gets put on hold. The laptop gets shut down. I give priorities to somebody else. It's obvious that I need to really focus on myself.
Yeah.
I would say that's where the number scale works for me, I think.
So if you're sat on the sofa with your partner and your daughter and you're watching like a TV show or a film that you all like, and the dog's curled up next to you, and it's like, it's a Friday evening, you've not really got any major responsibilities that you're hiding from or anything, what would you be at in that kind of situation?
That would probably be like a 9 for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good. I don't need much excitement to be happy.
Yeah. I think a 10 would be all of that, and you just won the lottery, right? Like that's when it's like, you jump that extra step.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really good. And my number varies massively throughout the day. So if I'm having a stressful time, maybe I've just had a bit of a family rupture or something really stressful has happened, I'll be at like a 3. But then once it's done and dusted and dealt with, I'll jump up to like a 6 again. So it's understanding that I know that it can jump up and down. However, if it stays at a 3, if I'm at a 3 in the morning and then I'm still at a 3 at midday, right, there's something that I need to do here now.
Yeah.
So this is why it's such a good tool. So if you wake up in the morning and say, what number am I today? Okay, I'm a 2. What can I do to get myself up to a 5? Maybe even if you jump up to a 3, that's still better than being a 2.
Yep.
Or if I'm at a 6 or 7, fantastic. What can I do to keep this going? What can I do to make sure my number doesn't drop down? Is also really good.
Could be that, you know, as well, you've got something stressful coming up in the day. So you're like, how can I maintain this sort of more positive mind frame whilst dealing with that negative event or thing? You know, maybe you've got a meeting that you know is going to be tough, whether it's a work thing or a personal thing or a family thing or whatever it is. You might be like, actually, I feel in a pretty good mood and most of my day is great, but at 2 o'clock, I have to go and talk to that person about that thing, which is going to be stressful.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm in a good place going into that, and also coming out of it, I'm still going to be kind of in a good spot.
This leads in perfectly to our next slide, which is imagining that you have an internal battery. So very, very rarely do I ever let my phone get down to like 10%. Or I don't think I've ever, maybe once or twice, let my car run completely empty in the fuel. However, I let my own personal battery get drained all the time. So it kind of leads in what you were saying, Dec, about if you know that there's something coming up that will require a lot of internal battery usage, a really bad meeting or an exam or just any kind of stressful event, it's making sure you've got enough charge in the battery to deal with that. Like, you wouldn't set off on a journey halfway across the country with an empty fuel tank without knowing that you need to top up.
Yep.
So recognizing what drains that internal battery for you, again, it's very individual, and what recharges it is really important. So it could be that you're having tough conversations, it could be school or workload, or even just being in school or being at work. It could be the amount of chores that you have to do. It could be, like you say, visiting the in-laws. It could be spending time with a particular group of friends that you find quite draining. Even if it's a nice experience, you can still come away from it feeling drained. It could be doing a shop. Maybe you find Tesco's or Asda like super stressful. For me, like I said, the dentist, I know I'm going to be at like a 2% coming out of that situation if I'm not fully charged. What about you, Dec? What drains your battery?
I mean, I struggle a lot with sleep. So some days I just, I haven't really slept, and I'm quite a physical person. I like doing a lot of stuff. I don't really like sitting around too much. So some days it's like I've done a lot physically. I've been up on my feet all day. I've worked out. I've gone skateboarding for a few hours, and then I go to bed, and I just nothing happens. I just don't sleep, and so I wake up the next day, and in spite of being physically exhausted, I still haven't really slept, and so then I'm mentally exhausted, and that's the most common one for me. Is definitely just a lack of sleep. Is just there's days where it sort of feels like you're not quite, like, physically it feels like I'm not here. I feel like I'm almost behind myself. Everything feels like it's a little bit of a delay, and that's definitely a big one for me. That's probably the most common one that I deal with.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with that. Sleep is such an important one.
What about you?
I would say housework, definitely. I will avoid it like the plague if I could.
It never ends, right?
And it never, that's the thing that annoys me so much. It's like, I've cleaned the bathroom, why is it now it need cleaning again? So I know that if I have to clean the house, that is going to absolutely exhaust me. Also kind of, fallouts with, like I said, my daughter, or if we have a family bust up, I find that very stressful and very draining, even to the point, like, if she came home from school and says about the drama she's had with her friends that I can't go in and rescue, which I hate not being able to rescue her, but I know as a parent I'm not able to. I find that very draining. So I know that school pickup is coming up, right? I need to make sure that the laptop gets closed down, I go for a walk by myself or make myself a cup of coffee before I do it so that I've got enough energy for it. So then it's about understanding what is it for you that recharges your battery. Ideally, like I said, we would do it before the draining situations, not after, but it doesn't matter. As long as you get recharged, that's great. So it could be that reading a book or a magazine is good for you, having walks in nature, seeing friends, sitting outside, doing your favorite hobby, anything like that. Even if it's like having a cup of tea, something that just increases that battery charge in yourself is what we're aiming to increase here. I think we've spoken of before, Dec, but there are things on my recharge list that I won't do if I'm at like a 3%.
Yes, yeah.
So if I'm feeling at a 3%, I'm absolutely exhausted, the last thing I'm going to do is pick up a paintbrush and try and do a painting. Even though I know it recharges my battery, it's going to cost me like 15% just to try and get the idea onto paper, get all set up.
Yeah,
it's not going to work.
It's inertia, right? Like this, the energy it takes to start that momentum. Sometimes you don't have enough in the tank to start it. Whereas once you've started it, it's kind of self-generating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely agree. I think like charging wise, like music's always a big one for me. Like that's always a big one. But like a fast charge is like anything that makes me laugh. Like it really makes me laugh. And I'm pretty stoic for the most part. And like there are certain things that will just get me, and when something really makes me like really laugh, that's like I'm jumping like numbers and numbers and numbers at a time. It just absolutely, especially like the stuff that catches me by surprise and makes me laugh. That's like I just instantly I jump to like a 9 where it's almost too much. Like I'm like overcharged and something really makes me laugh. But a more sort of consistent one for me is music, and it can be it can be stuff that like hypes me up. Like I listen to something like disgustingly heavy, and then I'm like, that kind of powers me up again. Or sometimes it's the opposite. You want to listen to something that's just like going to give you that release in a more cathartic sense, where it's maybe you want to listen to something that's going to make you cry or make you feel, more. You're really going to feel whatever it is that you're feeling.
Totally.
And afterwards, you're like, oh, I feel so much better for that. I had to kind of get that out. But yeah, for me, music is like, that's Old Faithful. That's kind of always a consistent one. But yeah, things that make me laugh really that'll power me up.
Amazing.
But I don't know if you have any like specific quick charge things, or whether you kind of go more gently through those steps.
No, I think in the past, especially, I've been very guilty of letting myself get to a very low percentage before I think of recharging.
Yep.
So I've got those down. I know what those ones are, purely because I used to allow myself to get down to that very low percentage before thinking about what can I do for myself. So my ones would be journaling. I absolutely love just having a blank piece of paper and just writing out. Even if I write out, I have no idea what to say, but I just know I'm not feeling great. Here's what's happened today. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of helps me to process what's going on for me. So that's a really good one for myself. Again, like you say, watching a comedy or watching my favorite TV show, even though I've watched it like 15 times, putting on that like kind of nostalgic comfort show is really good for me as well. I love that. And then being outside in any capacity, I just love.
Which is funny because we've talked about it before, and I've always said I'm just not nostalgic. I just don't have like a nostalgia thing. I don't get it. Like I don't know what it is. There's something in my brain that it just doesn't really make sense to me. But yeah, there are certain things that, not necessarily in a nostalgic sense, there's things that I just know I find funny. Like obviously you and I talk about like old Simpsons. And that's why I still find it funny now. I don't find it funny because I used to find it funny. I still find it funny. And there are certain things that I can think about that will always tickle me because they're just inherently, they're funny.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. And that's so good. And laughter is such a, it releases some kind of happy hormone of some sort.
Yeah.
And it genuinely tricks your brain into thinking that everything's okay. So again, it's a really brilliant one.
And if something really gets you going, it uses your whole body as well. Like when you see someone and like you can see their like shoulders going when they're laughing and stuff. It's like if you say something and it makes someone laugh until they cry, it's like that kind of it's like it can be such a full body thing.
Totally. So yeah, if you're having thoughts of suicide, obviously we understand that your battery is probably going to be quite low most days, but it's making sure that if you know, for example, that you have, as we said, a big meeting coming up or a stressful conversation coming up, just try and recharge, even if it's just a little bit, in preparation for that, so you don't drop any lower. We're not asking you to get to 100% charge. 1%, again, we keep coming back, but what's the 1% you can do to make yourself feel a little bit more comfortable going into that situation is really important.
Absolutely.
And I know it's very hard to prioritize. I think we make excuses a lot of the time, being like, oh, I can't possibly go for a walk because I'm so busy.
Yeah.
But we can.
Yep. Absolutely.
So at Exercise, we do a workshop called Eat, Move, Love, which is the 10 mental health foundation tips onto living well, kind of juiced down into 3 because it's much easier to remember. So eat, so fueling your body, if you're at a 2% or you're at a number 2 on that scale, whichever one you prefer, having some fruit is going to instantly, like, again, we're talking 1% here. We're not talking about going out and making yourself a real lavished 3-course meal. Even if you can just pick up an apple, that would be great. That's going to help increase a little bit. Or even having if you're not feeling like eating, because I know some people, when they're in moments of overwhelm, their appetite is gone.
Yeah, I'm definitely that way around. When I go through like a kind of big negative event, I have no interest in eating. It's like one of the first things that goes for me.
Yeah. Whereas I know people who will eat more.
They'll eat their feelings
more, yeah, because in order to deal with it. So
yeah.
If that's the case, again, it's going, well, thinking of the 80-20 rule, can I get 80% nourishing foods in, 20% my favorite comfort foods that maybe aren't so nutritious, but fueling in some way is going to up your number. Hydrating is so important.
Yep.
Drinking some water, obviously our first choice, but I don't know if you've heard of the beverage goblin?
No.
I'm a beverage goblin. Someone's told me this. I didn't realize this is a thing, but I like to have 3 drinks at all stages.
Oh, you're one of those? Yeah, I've never heard it referred to that. But yeah, you're one of those people. Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I like to have my coffee, my water, and something that just tastes good.
Yeah.
So yeah, even if that's what it is, if you want to have a smoothie, if you're feeling really, if your percentage is high and you feel up to making yourself a smoothie, do that. Even making yourself a cup of chamomile tea or peppermint tea and really savoring those scents and smells and tastes, brilliant. But just getting some sort of hydration in would be great. Again, 1%, moving your body. It could be dancing. It could be literally, like we say, shaking out your hands, shaking out your body, swaying. If you're having to sit down, can you tap your feet? Can you tap across your body? Any kind of movement whatsoever is hopefully going to bring you up a state. Obviously, doing an exercise routine of yoga or, like I said, going for that walk is going to really increase your number, but we understand that, again, if you're at 2%, that ain't possible. So let's focus on the 1%.
Absolutely.
And then finding joy, or as you said, that kind of emotional release of some sort. So doing something that either brings you joy or will help you to release a little bit of emotion of some sort. So it could be, again, it could be reading, it could be picking up a guitar and just playing a song, or it could be, if you're feeling really angry, can you punch a pillow? Can you go into a car and have a little drive and just scream in your car? Can you, I don't know, if you're feeling sad, listen to a sad song.
I think our personal favourite, sometimes just a good harsh swear word, just like blast one of those out. And just like, like you just, feels like you put something down sometimes to just like throw one of those out. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, anything like that. If you can't think of anything, again, we've got the Library of Calm, you've got the distraction techniques. Hopefully at this stage you'll have thought a little bit about what it is that recharges that battery of yours. Doing anything on that list right now is so good. And then connection. We are social beings. I think we forget about this sometimes, especially when we're in a bad place, and the last thing we want to do is see people and have to pretend to be okay or feeling all right or feeling normal. But if you can text someone, call someone, arrange to see some, even if it's just like arranging to see some friends, again, like I said, that 1%, can you arrange to see a friend tomorrow? Can you go downstairs if you're upstairs in your room and your parents downstairs? Can you go downstairs and chat with them? Anything like that. Connection. We need connection. And picking the right people again is so important. So not picking that person that drains your battery right now. Picking the people that you know will increase your number because they're just your people. And again, if you haven't got that person in your life right now, or you can't see them because you're in the depths of it, calling helpline, getting in touch with Hector's House is exactly what we would like you to do, please.
It's something I say all the time. It's almost my sort of personal mantra at this point. It's just all we have is each other.
I love that so much.
You know, you can't do it alone.
Yeah, totally. And that's what we say, you know, anyone who reaches out, we are so grateful you're here, because it's not necessary to try and do this by yourself.
Yeah.
It's going to be so much easier knowing that there's someone in your corner with you. So yeah, reaching out would be amazing for you, and in that way of increasing your number. I'm going to go through again, just to reiterate, if you are unable to keep yourself safe, if you're feeling like the thoughts of suicide are getting to the extent you've tried your distraction techniques, maybe the thoughts of suicide aren't going away and you feel like you need to act on them, please remove the methods of harm that you have. Call 999 because this is an emergency. Refer to your safety plan. Who's on there? Is it a friend? Is it Hector's House? Is it Samaritans? Is it 85258? Call them. Get in touch with them, text them, whatever you need to do. Ask for help.
Yeah, again, it's everything we've gone through today. These are things to help you spot those signs that suicide is beginning to creep into your life. Maybe it's something you know you've been thinking about, but you haven't wanted to put those words to it. But most of what we've gone through is about spotting those signs, recognizing them, knowing them for what they are, and the steps you can start taking to begin mitigating those and getting yourself help. If you're feeling actively suicidal, like you said, it's an emergency. This is the time to call for help right now.
Completely that. And know that it's going to be okay. Like, we've had so many people feeling like they can't keep themselves safe, and they have been able to keep themselves safe.
Yep.
So it feels like the most impossible task when you're in that moment, but please know, if you reach out, if you text, if you call, it's going to be possible.
Absolutely.
And if you can take yourself to A&E or call that 999, fantastic. That will be that extra keep safe, you know, just because then you're in that safe space or you have those people around you. But please don't do it alone. We'll be so happy to hear from you. And I know all the helplines out there that are 24/7 suicide support line, they'll all be so grateful that you got in touch. So just some important reminders before we do wrap it up for today. Please remember that you are enough and you are worthy and you matter greatly. Very easy to lie to ourselves in these moments and tell ourselves that we are not enough, that we are not worthy of support. It's lies. You are so worthy of it. You just can't see it, but we see it. We'll be so happy to hear from you. Please get in touch. Remember that you are not a burden. And again, this goes down to getting in touch with the right people, making sure that you know that, yes, you can reach out to a friend who might not have capacity to help you right now, but that does not mean that you're the issue. It's that they have too much going on. There is always someone there that has capacity for you. If it's not within your circle of care, your friends or family or your loved ones, it's Hector's House, it's Samaritans, it's Papyrus, it's Shout. You just remember that you are not a burden at all. You have survived 100% of your bad days so far. Like, even on those days that you did not think you could get through it because it was too much, so overwhelming, you survived it. Your track record on surviving crap times is phenomenal. So remind yourself of that. And remember that this will pass. It is so temporary. As we said before, suicide is a very permanent solution to a very temporary problem. And I know you might think, well, I've been in this for months, I've been in this for years. I hear you, but it is going to get better. It's just that you need to take that next step in getting there by reaching out for support. But I can't tell, again, like I said, I can't tell you how many people we have helped and it has passed for them and they've got themselves safe and they're thriving now. So please reach out. Please know it'll pass. Remember how amazing you are that you survived 100% of your bad days. And even if you can't love yourself in this moment, just accept yourself where you are and just know that you're enough. And that's it from us.
I think the only thing I think I meant to bring it up earlier and I forgot to mention it specifically, but it's a big thing that we're always told, to treat other people how we'd like to be treated. And I think the thing that we forget is to treat ourselves how we try and treat other people. The transgressions that you'll forgive from people that you love, give yourself the same level of mercy and of kind of kindness. If you can forgive your friends for forgetting things, but you can't forgive yourself, why is that? You have to take it easy on yourself and give yourself time and give yourself the care and the love that you deserve, and know that with a bit of help and with a bit of support, you can get better and you can be happier and you can make your life one that you can enjoy.
Absolutely.
And then I think before we sign off, just one last time, if you do want to get in touch with us, that email address there, hihector@hectorshouse.org.uk, you can email that 24/7 with whatever your inquiry is. If you're looking for help, if you're looking to volunteer, if you want to find out more about what we do, whatever it is, you can fire an email off to that, and then someone will get back to you and we'll pick up whatever that topic is and do everything we can from there. Our website, hectorshouse.org.uk, has all our resources on there, such as the Library of Calm. It's got contact information for other charities and services on there, has more information about services we provide as well, whether that's things we do out in the community or services we can provide if you come to us. Everything's on there. So I think that's everything for today, Sarah, unless you have anything you want to add at the end of that.
No, just a reminder to reach out for support. And if you need to email in, please do. And remember that you are very much worthy. I think that's it.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to everyone who's watching. Take care of each other. And like I said before, all we have is each other. So take care of each other, do your best, and keep yourself safe. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.